Hello, my name is Gábor Megyaszai, and I'm very happy to be here and to be able to present to you today. Let's get started with a little bit about me. So, throughout my career, I have spent around 9 years in various IT fields, dealing with databases, networks, and other sysadmin stuff. Then I have spent another 9 years working with one of the major telecom vendors. And then I had the opportunity to experience how telecom is a much more rigid, slow-moving animal compared to other enterprise IT fields. And also had to experience what does that mean to their business and what problems does it lead to. Now in my current role at Eficode, I have the opportunity to work with the largest telecom providers and see the other side of the coin I have experienced in my vendor years. And this is what I want to talk about today. How the telecom industry is striving for a change in their operations, but vendors and providers being dependent on each other, and both being highly regulated, makes things difficult. Luckily, we start to see an out of this situation, and things are in motion for a more agile operations with closer collaboration and what some might even be able to call DevOps. Let's get started with what I have learned and what we did while I was working with a vendor. While I was working in product development, we frequently encountered that from completion of a release till it is actually taken into use at a CSP premise, significant time passes. It could have been anywhere between 6 to 18 months. This caused us problems in a multitude of ways, including going back to old releases to make corrections, maintain environments to verify changes to these old releases and test compatibility. And of course, it happened many times that the person who created the original code has moved to another team or even to another company. So someone had to pick up things and figure out what the original code was meant to do to begin with. As we started to investigate what are the root causes and what we could do about them, we have received many inputs from different stakeholders, and of course we made our own conclusions as well. First, and probably the biggest problem we found, was the release strategy. The company for its applications had maybe 1 or 2 releases per year. Best case scenario, it was up to 4, but it might as well could have been much less as well. This meant that each release had a huge change content. Dozens of features, even more corrections. It could introduce significant changes on different interfaces or on the platform itself. This meant that the effort to take them into operational use was quite huge, and unfortunately in many cases it was quite manual. The different constellations of neighboring network elements had to be verified and CSP-specific configurations tried and tested. Of course, all these different scenarios no R&Ds could test, thus sometimes huge errors were uncovered in CSP's acceptance cycle. This meant a long back and forth between CSP, services, and R&D. All these took significant effort from all parties involved. In many cases, penalties were even involved, but most importantly, this long cycle time eventually slowed down the development, as quite an effort was tied down in correcting these various and even old errors. As said, these acceptance cycles could take up to 12 or even 18 months. In a support model, where a release was maintained and supported for 36 months. This meant that continuous negotiations were taking place so that CSPs can utilize given release longer than it is granted by the support model, which led to even more R&D work where, for example, custom upgrade paths had to be developed And of course, it had to be tested as well. Also, business-wise, this model meant problems as well. It was rigid enough to not leave room for introducing new business models instead of the existing and old way of permanent licensing. It was slowing down the R&D machinery enough that there was not enough capacity to experiment with new features, new capabilities, and tie down enough sales and services resources that new market opportunities had to slip away. And also, there was not enough high level of automation or any digital support to boost the efficiency of sales, services, or even the R&D. As we went deeper in our investigation and mapped out what is actually happening when R&D creates a new software and the CSP buys it, we uncovered this quite ugly spider web of nightmare. It's not a problem that you can't read the fine print, it would just be even scarier. But by looking at this picture, we can see that there are an unreasonable amount of subsystems, tools, teams involved in a simple order fulfillment. In most cases, these tools and even teams were disconnected, relying on manual data transfer, manual data validation, people triggering actions, and maybe even people executing them. On average, this meant that if somebody ordered an already completed software release, it would have been delivered